On a cold, silent night, a stray dog appeared out of nowhere, barking relentlessly near a pile of leaves. Passers-by ignored it, but the dog wouldn't stop. What it was trying to reveal would leave everyone stunned. The story begins on the outskirts of a quiet suburban neighborhood, surrounded by dense woods that stretched endlessly under the vast sky. The streets were dimly lit, and the occasional chirp of crickets broke the eerie silence of the night. It was a small, close-knit community where people lived simple lives, trusting that nothing extraordinary ever disturbed their tranquil routines. Amid this serene yet predictable backdrop lived Maria, a young single mother, and her infant son, Noah. Maria was in her mid-20s, navigating the challenges of raising a child alone while balancing a job at a local diner. She lived in a modest house at the edge of the neighborhood, where the woods seemed to press against her backyard, creating a natural but slightly unsettling barrier. Maria's life had always been ordinary. Early mornings, long shifts, and sleepless nights tending to Noah, who had recently started teething and cried often. Despite the exhaustion, Maria was devoted to her baby. Her world revolved around his tiny hands, toothless grins, and soft babbling. But as much as she adored him, the isolation of her situation weighed heavily on her. With little family nearby and only a handful of acquaintances in the area, Maria often felt like she was carrying the weight of the world alone. The other character in this tale, however, was far from ordinary. A scruffy stray dog roamed the neighborhood, a creature of resilience and mystery. The locals had nicknamed him Shadow because of the way he seemed to appear and disappear without warning. Shadow was a medium-sized dog with matted brown fur, bright amber eyes, and a limp in his hind leg, likely from an old injury. No one knew where he had come from or how he managed to survive, but he was a familiar sight to those who lived in the area. Children would often try to approach him with scraps of food, but Shadow kept his distance, wary of human interaction. He seemed to live on the fringes, scavenging for survival while keeping a watchful eye on the world around him. Despite his cautious nature, Shadow had a peculiar habit. He was often seen sitting near Maria's house, staring toward her backyard as if waiting for something. Maria had noticed him a few times and even considered leaving out food for him, but life's demands always pulled her attention elsewhere. Besides, she assumed the dog would move on, as strays often did. The night that would change everything began like any other. Maria had finally managed to put Noah to sleep after a particularly restless evening. Exhausted, she collapsed onto the couch, her eyelids growing heavy. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, and the neighborhood seemed to settle into its usual nighttime stillness. But Shadow was not resting. Unbeknownst to Maria, the dog had taken his usual spot near her backyard, his ears perked and his body tense as if sensing something unusual in the air. As the hours ticked by, Maria dozed off, leaving a dim lamp on in the living room. In the nursery, Noah lay bundled in his crib, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. Then, in the dead of night, a faint, strange sound broke the silence. It was muffled and distant, almost like a faint whistle or creak, but was enough to stir Shadow from his watchful position. The dog's ears twitched, and he stood up, sniffing the air. His amber eyes scanned the surroundings, narrowing as he caught sight of a faint light flickering in the woods behind Maria's house. Shadow let out a low growl, the fur along his spine bristling. Something was wrong. Without hesitation, he darted toward the back door, his limp barely slowing him down as he began barking furiously. Inside the house, Maria jolted awake, startled by the sudden noise. Her heart raced as she realized the barking was coming from just outside her home. Disoriented, she stumbled to the window and peered out into the backyard, but all she could see was darkness. The barking grew louder, more desperate, echoing through the night like an urgent alarm. Maria hesitated, fear creeping into her thoughts. Was someone outside? Or was it just the stray dog again? She had seen him around before, but he had never caused such a commotion. As her mind raced with questions, another sound reached her ears, a faint, high-pitched cry. Her blood ran cold. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from Noah's room. Panicked, Maria rushed toward the nursery, her bare feet skidding on the hardwood floor. As she threw open the door, her breath caught in her throat. Noah's crib was empty. The blanket he had been swaddled in lay crumpled at the bottom, and the window near the crib was slightly ajar, letting in a chilling draft. Heart pounding, Maria leaned out the window and looked into the backyard. That's when she saw Shadow, standing near the edge of the woods, barking furiously and glancing back toward the house as if urging her to follow. Maria's maternal instincts kicked in, and without a second thought, she grabbed a flashlight and ran out into the night, barefoot and trembling, determined to find her son. The flashlight's beam cut through the darkness as Maria followed the sound of Shadow's barks. The dog led her toward the woods, his injured leg barely slowing him down. Maria's mind raced with fear and confusion. What was happening? How had Noah disappeared? And why was this stray dog leading her deeper into the shadows of the forest? The setting had transformed into something surreal. The towering trees loomed like silent witnesses to the unfolding drama, their branches casting eerie shadows on the ground. The cold air bit at Maria's skin, but she pressed on, driven by a mixture of fear and hope. Shadow finally stopped at a clearing, his barking intensifying as he circled a specific spot on the ground. Maria approached, her hand shaking as she directed the flashlight's beam toward where Shadow was pointing. What she saw made her knees buckle, her heart pounding in disbelief. The introduction of Maria, Shadow, and the quiet suburban setting sets the stage for a story that begins as ordinary but quickly escalates into an extraordinary tale of courage, mystery, and a bond that defies explanation. The tranquil life Maria had grown accustomed to was shattered the moment she stepped into the woods, following the mysterious barks of Shadow. The night was darker than she'd ever remembered, the trees towering like ominous sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to ensnare her. The cold, damp air carried a sense of foreboding, and her flashlight flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. With every step deeper into the unknown, Maria's anxiety grew. Her baby Noah was missing, and the only guide she had was a stray dog whose sudden urgency seemed to hold the answer to her worst fears. Shadow darted ahead, his injured leg causing him to stumble but never falter. Every few moments, he would stop, turn his head toward Maria, and bark as if to beckon her to hurry. Maria's bare feet crunched against the underbrush, but she paid no attention to the pain. Her mind was consumed by the question that screamed louder than her pounding heartbeat. How could Noah, her precious baby, vanish from his crib? The thought of someone breaking into her home seemed impossible. She lived in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other, where people locked their doors out of habit rather than fear. Yet the partially open window in Noah's room suggested something sinister. Her imagination ran wild. Was it an animal? A person? But who would do such a thing? And why? These thoughts swirled as she hurried through the dense woods, the faint cries of her son now mingling with the sound of Shadow's barks. As they delved deeper, the cries grew louder, sending fresh adrenaline surging through Maria's veins. She strained her ears, focusing on the sound. It was unmistakable. It was Noah. But there was something else. A low, guttural growl echoed through the trees, a sound that froze Maria in her tracks. She turned to Shadow, who had also stopped and was now growling softly, his fur standing on end. He looked ahead, his ears twitching, as if sensing danger lurking in the shadows. Maria's grip tightened on the flashlight. Its weak beam illuminated a narrow path that seemed to lead to a small clearing up ahead. She hesitated for a brief moment, fear clawing at her resolve. But Shadow's determined bark snapped her out of her paralysis, and she pressed forward. As they neared the clearing, Maria could make out a strange shape on the ground. Her heart thudded in her chest as she approached, the beam of her flashlight revealing a crumpled blanket, the very one Noah had been swaddled in earlier that night. She dropped to her knees, clutching the blanket as tears streamed down her face. It smelled of Noah, his soft baby scent mingled with the faint earthiness of the forest. But he wasn't there. The cries had stopped, leaving an unbearable silence that made the forest feel even more oppressive. Despair threatened to consume her, but Shadow's bark once again pierced the quiet, jolting Maria back to the moment. The dog stood a few feet away, his gaze fixed on something in the distance. His tail wagged slightly, as if he'd found something, or someone. Maria rose shakily, clutching the blanket as she followed Shadow further into the woods. The dog led her to a hollowed-out tree, its twisted trunk creating a natural shelter. Inside, Maria saw the most incredible sight. Noah, unharmed but shivering, lying on a soft bed of leaves and moss. Relief washed over her, and she rushed forward, scooping her baby into her arms. His cries started again, but this time they were a welcome sound, a sign that he was alive and well. As she cradled Noah, Maria's tears fell freely, a mixture of joy and overwhelming emotion. But her relief was short-lived as she noticed something unusual about the hollow tree. Around its base were several scattered leaves, carefully arranged in a pattern that seemed deliberate. Shadow stood beside the tree, his tail wagging, and his amber eyes glowing with an intelligence that Maria couldn't quite comprehend. It dawned on her then. Shadow had been bringing leaves to her yard for weeks. At first, she had thought it was a peculiar habit, something stray dogs did out of boredom or instinct. But now, standing here in the forest with her baby safe in her arms, she realized that those leaves had been a message, a sign that Shadow had been watching over them, preparing for this moment. The mystery deepened as Maria tried to piece together what had happened. How had Noah ended up in the woods? Why was he placed so carefully in the hollow tree, surrounded by leaves as if protected? The growls she had heard earlier suggested that some kind of threat had been nearby, yet Noah was unharmed. Shadow, who had always kept his distance, had somehow known where to find him and had led her straight to him. The stray dog had become an unlikely hero, a guardian angel in the guise of a scruffy canine. Maria looked at Shadow with newfound respect and gratitude. The dog, who had been dismissed by so many as just another stray, had risked everything to save her child. She reached out to him, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, her words barely audible over the lump in her throat. Shadow wagged his tail and licked her hand, as if to say he was just doing what he was meant to do. But Maria couldn't shake the feeling that there was something extraordinary about this dog, something that defied explanation. As they made their way back through the woods, Maria couldn't help but glance over her shoulder, half expecting to see something or someone emerging from the shadows. But the forest remained still, its secrets hidden in the darkness. For now, all that mattered was that Noah was safe, and the stray dog who had once been a mystery was now a part of their family, forever bound by the incredible events of that night. The air was tense as Maria, holding her baby Noah tightly in her arms, tried to process the whirlwind of emotions flooding her mind. Shadow, the stray dog that had led her to this miraculous moment, was still on high alert. His ears perked, his gaze fixated on the forest surrounding them. The realization that something or someone had placed Noah inside the hollow tree had yet to fully sink in. What began as an unimaginable night of fear had now reached a crescendo of confusion, gratitude, and lingering danger. Maria's heart raced as she crouched down to inspect the hollow tree more closely. The bed of leaves and moss where Noah had been lying was not a random assortment of forest debris. It was carefully arranged, almost as though someone or something had prepared it for him. The realization sent shivers down her spine. Shadow's quiet growls pulled her focus back to the present. He stood by her side, his body tense, his eyes scanning the forest as if he were waiting for something to emerge. Maria whispered softly to Noah, her voice trembling as she tried to comfort him. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's here. We're going to be okay." But deep inside, she wasn't sure. How had her baby ended up here? Who or what was responsible? And why was Shadow acting as if the danger was still very real? The forest, eerily silent until now, suddenly seemed alive with sounds. Twigs snapped in the distance, and the rustle of leaves hinted at movement. Maria's breath hitched as she clutched Noah tighter, her eyes darting around the dark woods. Shadow let out a low, menacing growl, positioning himself protectively in front of Maria and Noah. His injured leg didn't seem to deter him. If anything, his resolve to protect them seemed stronger than ever. "Who's there?" Maria called out, her voice shaking. The echo of her words seemed to mock her, bouncing back from the trees with no answer. The flashlight in her hand flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that only added to her growing sense of unease. She felt utterly exposed, surrounded by the vast, dark expanse of the forest. Just as she was about to lose hope, Shadow's growl turned into a sharp bark. Maria turned her head in the direction he was facing, her flashlight beam trembling as she tried to steady her hand. That's when she saw it, a pair of glowing eyes peering at them from the darkness. They were too low to the ground to belong to a person, but too deliberate and focused to be those of a harmless animal. Maria's stomach churned as the eyes blinked, their gaze unwavering. Shadow barked again, louder this time, his body bristling with tension. The glowing eyes moved closer, stepping into the faint light of the flashlight. A coyote. It wasn't alone. Another set of eyes appeared, and then another. Maria's pulse quickened as she realized they were surrounded. The coyotes, drawn by the cries of her baby or the scent of something unfamiliar, had been lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maria's grip on Noah tightened as she tried to think of a way out. The odds seemed impossible. She was unarmed, holding her baby, with only a flashlight and a wounded dog to defend them. But Shadow's presence gave her a sliver of hope. Despite his injury, he positioned himself between Maria and the advancing coyotes, his barks growing fiercer with each step they took. The lead coyote snarled, baring its teeth as it inched closer. Shadow lunged forward, snapping his jaws in a show of dominance. The two animals circled each other, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Maria's heart raced as she watched the standoff, her mind racing with fear and desperation. "Please, Shadow," she whispered under her breath. "Please be okay." Shadow's bravery seemed to momentarily deter the coyotes. The lead one hesitated, its growl softening as it calculated its next move. Maria took the opportunity to slowly back away, cradling Noah and moving toward a denser cluster of trees that might offer some cover. But as she took her first step, a dry branch snapped under her foot, the sharp sound echoing through the forest like a gunshot. The coyotes' attention snapped back to her, their predatory instincts reignited. Shadow barked furiously, throwing himself between Maria and the advancing pack. The lead coyote lunged, and in a flurry of movement, the two animals collided. Maria's scream pierced the air as she watched the fight unfold. Shadow, despite his injury, fought with everything he had. Teeth clashed, and growls filled the air as the two animals wrestled. Maria wanted to look away, but she couldn't. Shadow's determination was unwavering, his loyalty to her and Noah shining through in every move he made. The other coyotes circled, their growls growing louder as they prepared to join the fray. Maria knew she couldn't stay frozen any longer. She scanned the area desperately for anything she could use to protect herself and Noah. Her eyes landed on a fallen branch nearby, its jagged end splintered but sturdy. Carefully placing Noah on the ground behind her, she grabbed the branch and held it in front of her like a makeshift weapon. As the second coyote lunged toward her, Maria swung the branch with all her strength, catching it across the snout. The animal yelped and backed away, its confidence shaken. Shadow, emboldened by Maria's actions, managed to overpower the lead coyote, forcing it to retreat with a final snap of his jaws. The pack hesitated, their leader's defeat sowing doubt among them. One by one, they began to back away, their glowing eyes disappearing into the darkness. Maria collapsed to her knees, her body trembling with relief and exhaustion. Shadow limped toward her, his fur matted with dirt and blood, but his eyes shone with a quiet triumph. He nudged her hand with his nose, as if to reassure her that the danger had passed. Tears streamed down Maria's face as she reached out to him, stroking his fur and whispering words of gratitude. "You saved us," she said, her voice breaking. "You're our hero." Noah, still crying softly, seemed to sense the shift in the air. Maria picked him up, holding him close as she tried to calm both herself and her baby. Shadow stayed by her side, his protective presence a constant comfort. The forest, which had felt so menacing just moments ago, now seemed almost peaceful in its silence. The coyotes were gone, and Maria felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude toward the dog who had risked everything for them. As they made their way back through the forest, the first rays of dawn began to break through the trees, casting a soft golden light over the path. Maria's legs felt heavy with exhaustion, but her heart was lighter than it had been all night. She knew the events of this night would stay with her forever, a story of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between a mother, her child, and a stray dog who had become so much more. As the immediate danger subsided, the neighborhood began to stir with a mix of emotions, shock, awe, and gratitude. The sight of the stray dog cradling the rescued baby in its gentle jaws had left an indelible impression on everyone present. People whispered among themselves, trying to make sense of what had just unfolded. Who was this dog? Where had it come from? And how had it instinctively known what to do when even humans hesitated? Paramedics quickly arrived on the scene, their flashing lights painting the surroundings in hues of red and blue. The baby, though visibly shaken, appeared unharmed, save for a few scratches and a thin layer of dirt covering its tiny body. The medics gently placed the baby on a stretcher, carefully checking for injuries. The baby's cries filled the air, loud and strong, a sign of resilience in the face of adversity. The crowd sighed in collective relief, realizing the magnitude of the miracle they had just witnessed. Amidst all the commotion, the stray dog sat silently on the pavement, its intelligent eyes fixed on the baby as if to ensure it was truly safe. Its chest rose and fell with rapid breaths, evidence of the physical exertion it had undergone. For a moment, it seemed as though the dog was ready to leave, its job complete. But then something remarkable happened. The baby reached out with its tiny hand, as if beckoning the dog to stay. The dog tilted its head, its ears perking up, and slowly approached the stretcher. A gentle hand from one of the paramedics reassured the dog that it was welcome. It sat down next to the stretcher, its presence radiating calm and protection. The neighborhood, once bustling with mundane activities, now felt transformed. People who had never spoken to each other before now exchanged words, united by the incredible event they had all witnessed. They shared theories about where the dog had come from and how it could possess such remarkable instincts. Some believed it was a guardian angel in disguise, sent to protect the innocent. Others speculated that the dog might have had a tragic past that had sharpened its survival skills and heightened its empathy. Meanwhile, the authorities began piecing together the circumstances surrounding the baby's abandonment. A few witnesses claimed to have seen a distressed woman wandering the area earlier in the day, cradling a bundle in her arms. They described her as looking disoriented and desperate, perhaps overwhelmed by circumstances beyond her control. The police promised a thorough investigation, vowing to find answers and ensure the baby's safety moving forward. The stray dog, however, had no interest in the unfolding drama. Its focus remained on the baby, its loyalty unwavering. As the medics prepared to transport the baby to the hospital for further evaluation, they faced a dilemma. What would they do with the dog? It was clear to everyone that the dog and the baby shared an unbreakable bond, forged in the heat of an extraordinary moment. Separating them seemed unthinkable. It was then that a kind-hearted woman from the crowd stepped forward. Her name was Sarah, a local animal rescuer known for her compassion and dedication to strays. She had tears in her eyes as she approached the dog, kneeling down to meet its gaze. "You're a hero," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "And you deserve a home." The dog regarded her cautiously at first, as if trying to assess her intentions. But when Sarah extended her hand, the dog sniffed it and wagged its tail tentatively. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. Sarah smiled and turned to the paramedics. "I'll take care of the dog," she offered. "But only if it's allowed to stay with the baby until the family situation is sorted out." The medics exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. It was an unconventional arrangement, but given the circumstances, it felt like the right thing to do. Sarah promised to follow the ambulance to the hospital, ensuring that the dog wouldn't be separated from the baby for even a moment. As the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle drove away, the crowd began to disperse, each person carrying with them the memory of the day a stray dog had performed an act of pure, selfless heroism. Conversations buzzed with plans to share the story on social media, ensuring that the dog's bravery would not go unnoticed. Some even suggested starting a fundraiser to support Sarah's animal rescue efforts, inspired by her willingness to step up in a moment of need. At the hospital, the baby was given a thorough checkup and declared healthy. The staff couldn't help but marvel at the story they had just heard, and many came to the room simply to catch a glimpse of the dog that had saved a life. The dog, now affectionately named Guardian by the nurses, remained calm and composed, its eyes never straying far from the baby. As the hours turned into days, the story spread like wildfire, capturing the hearts of people far and wide. News outlets picked up the story, and soon, Guardian became a symbol of hope and resilience. Offers of adoption poured in, both for the dog and the baby, but Sarah was firm in her resolve. She believed that the dog and the baby were meant to stay together, their bond too special to be broken. The authorities eventually located the baby's mother, a young woman named Emily, who had been struggling with severe postpartum depression. Her story was one of heartbreak and desperation, but also of hope and redemption. With the support of social services and the community, she began her journey toward healing, grateful beyond words for the dog that had saved her child. Guardian, true to its name, continued to watch over the baby, even as Emily and Sarah worked together to create a safe and loving environment. The bond between the three grew stronger with each passing day, a testament to the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. The falling action of this story wasn't just about resolving the immediate crisis, it was about the ripple effects of one dog's incredible act of bravery. It was about the connections forged between strangers, the power of compassion, and the resilience of the human and animal spirit. Guardian's actions had not only saved a life, but it also inspired countless others to believe in the possibility of miracles, even in the most unlikely of forms. As days passed, the initial euphoria surrounding Guardian and the baby began to fade, giving way to a storm of unforeseen challenges. The bond between Guardian, the stray dog, and the baby remained unbroken, but external forces started to intrude upon their fragile sanctuary. What had begun as a story of heroism and unity now faced a resurgence of conflict that tested the strength of everyone involved. The media attention that had once been a blessing turned into a relentless invasion. Reporters camped outside Sarah's home, vying for interviews and exclusive footage of Guardian and the baby. While Sarah had initially welcomed the publicity to highlight the plight of stray animals, the sheer magnitude of the coverage began to overwhelm her. The constant presence of cameras and microphones not only disrupted her daily life, but also posed a threat to the baby's privacy and safety. The situation escalated when rumors began to circulate. Some speculated that the baby's rescue was staged, accusing Sarah and Emily of fabricating the story for attention. Social media, once filled with messages of support, became a battleground of conspiracy theories and skepticism. Videos and photos were dissected, and every detail of Sarah's and Emily's lives was scrutinized. The negativity took a toll on Sarah, who had devoted her life to helping animals, and on Emily, who was still recovering from her traumatic experience. Emily, who had been slowly rebuilding her life, found herself at the center of a legal battle. Child Protective Services, acting on an anonymous tip, launched an investigation into her ability to care for her child. Though the caseworker assigned to her was kind and empathetic, the process dredged up painful memories and amplified her feelings of inadequacy. Emily's past struggles with postpartum depression were brought into question, and she was forced to prove her fitness as a mother. The thought of losing her child filled her with dread, and the stress threatened to undo the progress she had made. At the same time, Guardian faced challenges of its own. Local authorities received complaints about the dog, with some residents claiming it was a public safety hazard. Though Guardian had shown no signs of aggression, the fact that it was a stray fueled fears and prejudices. Animal control officers visited Sarah's home, citing ordinances about stray animals and threatening to remove Guardian unless proper documentation was provided. Sarah argued passionately on Guardian's behalf, but the bureaucracy was relentless. She realized that to protect Guardian, she would need to formally adopt it, a process that required time, money, and legal expertise. The conflict seemed to converge one fateful afternoon when Sarah's house was vandalized. Spray-painted messages on her fence accused her of exploiting Guardian for fame. The act of cruelty shook Sarah to her core, but it also galvanized her resolve. She realized that she couldn't face these challenges alone and reached out to the community for support. Sarah organized a public meeting, inviting neighbors, reporters, and local officials to hear the full story of Guardian's heroism and the struggles they now faced. She spoke with raw emotion, recounting the moment Guardian had saved the baby and the bond that had formed between the dog, the baby, and Emily. Her words resonated with many, reminding them of the humanity at the heart of the story. During the meeting, Emily mustered the courage to share her own story. She spoke about her battle with postpartum depression, her feelings of hopelessness, and the moment she realized she needed help. Her vulnerability struck a chord with the audience, many of whom had faced their own struggles or knew someone who had. Emily's honesty helped shift the narrative, and community began to rally around her. Guardian, as if sensing the importance of the moment, sat quietly by Emily's side, its presence a living testament to the power of compassion and loyalty. The crowd, once divided by rumors and skepticism, began to unite in support of Sarah, Emily, and Guardian. Donations poured in to help cover Guardian's adoption fees and Emily's legal expenses. Local businesses offered their services pro bono, and volunteers stepped forward to assist with everything from repairing Sarah's vandalized property to organizing a fundraiser. Despite the renewed sense of hope, the conflicts were far from over. Emily's court hearing loomed on the horizon, and the outcome was uncertain. Guardian's adoption process hit a snag when officials discovered that the dog had no prior records, making it difficult to prove its vaccination history. Sarah found herself juggling countless responsibilities, from attending meetings with lawyers to managing the logistics of her animal rescue work. One evening, as Sarah sat at her kitchen table surrounded by paperwork, she glanced at Guardian, who was curled up at her feet. The dog's steady presence reminded her why she was fighting so hard. She resolved to push through the challenges, no matter how daunting they seemed. Emily, too, drew strength from Guardian and her baby. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she would watch the two interact, marveling at the bond they shared. Guardian seemed to understand the baby's every need, from soothing cries to playful interactions. It was a relationship born of adversity, yet it radiated pure joy and love. As the weeks passed, small victories began to emerge. Sarah successfully completed the adoption process, ensuring that Guardian would remain a permanent member of their family. Emily's court hearing, though emotionally taxing, ended with a positive outcome. The judge acknowledged Emily's efforts to seek help and commended her for creating a stable environment for her child. With the support of social services and the community, Emily was given the opportunity to continue raising her child under close supervision. The media coverage, though still persistent, began to shift its tone. Stories highlighting Sarah's animal rescue work and Emily's journey of redemption gained traction, drowning out the negativity. Guardian became a local celebrity, its story serving as a reminder of the goodness that can emerge from even the most difficult circumstances. Though the conflicts had taken a toll, they also brought unexpected blessings. The challenges forced Sarah, Emily, and Guardian to rely on each other, strengthening their bond and creating a sense of family. The community, once divided by fear and mistrust, came together in a show of solidarity that left a lasting impact. As the dust settled, Sarah reflected on the journey they had undertaken. The conflicts they had faced were not just obstacles but opportunities for growth and connection. Guardian, the stray dog that had once been overlooked and underestimated, had not only saved a life but also inspired a movement. In its own quiet way, Guardian had shown the world the power of loyalty, compassion, and resilience. As the chaos and challenges began to subside, the pieces of the story started falling into place. What had initially seemed like an unending storm of problems gradually transformed into moments of clarity, healing, and hope. Sarah, Emily, and Guardian had endured relentless waves of conflict, but now they stood on the threshold of resolution, their bonds stronger than ever. Emily, still shaken by the custody investigation, found herself in a better place emotionally. The court had ruled in her favor, acknowledging her efforts to create a nurturing environment for her child. Yet, the journey to rebuild her confidence as a mother was ongoing. She attended parenting workshops offered by local organizations, determined to learn everything she could to give her baby the best life possible. These sessions became a source of empowerment, as Emily met other parents who had faced similar struggles. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of belonging and purpose. Meanwhile, Guardian's presence continued to weave its magic, not just in Emily's life but also in the community. The stray dog that had once roamed the streets alone was now a symbol of resilience and unconditional love. Sarah, who had adopted Guardian after a lengthy and emotionally charged process, marveled at how the dog's journey mirrored her own struggles as an advocate for animals. Guardian had found a home, and in doing so had brought together a fractured community. Sarah, too, experienced her own sense of resolution. The vandalism of her property had initially left her disheartened, but the overwhelming support from neighbors, friends, and even strangers had restored her faith in humanity. Volunteers helped repair the damage, repainting her fence and planting flowers in her yard as a gesture of solidarity. Each time Sarah stepped outside and saw the vibrant colors blooming, she was reminded of the kindness that had emerged from the adversity they faced. The media, which had once been a source of stress and intrusion, shifted its narrative. Journalists who had once chased rumors and sensational headlines now focused on the positive aspects of the story. Features about Sarah's animal rescue work began circulating, highlighting the importance of adopting stray animals and supporting local shelters. Emily's story of redemption also gained traction, inspiring countless others who were battling similar struggles. And, of course, Guardian became the centerpiece of it all, a hero whose actions had saved a life and united a community. With the media coverage taking a more uplifting turn, donations and support poured in for Sarah's rescue center. She used the funds to expand her operations, rescuing more animals and providing them with the care they needed. Guardian became the unofficial mascot of the rescue, often accompanying Sarah to events and fundraisers. Children and adults alike would gather to meet the heroic dog, their faces lighting up as Guardian wagged its tail and offered gentle licks of affection. For Emily, the newfound stability in her life allowed her to focus on her future. She began pursuing a part-time job, working from home so she could remain close to her baby. The job, though modest, gave her a sense of independence and accomplishment. With every paycheck, she felt a little more secure, a little more capable. Guardian was never far from her side, offering quiet companionship during late-night feedings or playtime in the yard. The bond between the dog and the baby only deepened, their interactions a constant source of joy for Emily. The community, too, found its own sense of closure. The public meeting Sarah had organized became the first of many gatherings aimed at fostering understanding and unity. Neighbors who had once been strangers began to connect, sharing their own stories and experiences. The skepticism and division that had initially surfaced gave way to a collective desire to support one another. Guardian's story became a catalyst for change, reminding everyone of the importance of compassion, not just for animals but for people as well. One particularly moving moment came during a community event organized by Sarah and Emily. They invited families, local businesses, and animal lovers to celebrate the power of second chances. The event featured games, food stalls, and a special segment where Guardian was honored with a medal for bravery. As Sarah placed the medal around Guardian's neck, the crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the park. It was a moment of pure joy, a culmination of all the hardships they had endured. Emily, standing with her baby in her arms, felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She looked at Sarah, who had become a steadfast friend and mentor, and at Guardian, whose actions had set this entire journey into motion. In that moment, Emily realized how far she had come, from the depths of despair to a life filled with hope and love. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered a silent thank you to Guardian, the dog that had not only saved her baby but had also saved her. As the event wound down, Sarah and Emily found themselves sitting together on a bench, watching Guardian play with the children in the park. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the scene. Sarah turned to Emily, her voice filled with warmth. "You know," she said, "I think Guardian was meant to find you. To find us. Sometimes, the hardest journeys lead to the most beautiful destinations." Emily nodded, her heart full. "I believe that too," she replied. Guardian wasn't just saving a life that night. He was bringing all of us together. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. The media attention gradually faded, leaving behind a sense of normalcy. Emily continued to work on building a stable future for her baby, while Sarah expanded her rescue operations with the help of the community. Guardian, now a beloved member of their makeshift family, remained a constant source of joy and inspiration. The resolution of their story was not without its lingering scars, but those scars served as reminders of their resilience. Each challenge they had faced had brought them closer together, forging bonds that would endure for a lifetime. Sarah, Emily, and Guardian had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, their lives forever changed by the events that had unfolded. And though the world moved on to other stories, those who had been touched by Guardian's heroism carried its message in their hearts. It was a story of second chances, of finding light in the darkest of moments, and of the extraordinary impact that one stray dog could have on the lives of so many. As Sarah often said, Guardian didn't just save a baby's life. He reminded all of us what it means to be human. The story of Guardian, Emily, Sarah, and the baby may have reached its resolution, but its ripple effect continued to inspire countless lives. As life gradually returned to normal, the remarkable journey they had shared became a powerful reminder of the boundless possibilities of love, courage, and compassion. This is not just a story about a stray dog and the people it brought together. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the extraordinary connections we can form with animals. For Emily, life began to stabilize in ways she could never have imagined when she first held her newborn in her arms that fateful night. The warmth and safety she now felt every day were a far cry from the overwhelming fear and helplessness she had endured. Her baby was thriving, giggling at Guardian's antics, and growing up surrounded by love and security. Guardian had been instrumental in more ways than one. Not only had he saved her baby's life, but he had also ignited a fire within Emily to rebuild her own life with determination. Emily often reflected on the transformation she had undergone. What had started as desperation turned into strength, with Guardian's courage serving as her guiding light. She had learned to embrace the challenges life threw her way, seeing each obstacle as an opportunity to grow. Her baby's laughter became her daily motivation, a sound that filled her small home with joy. She was no longer the timid, overwhelmed woman she once was. She was now a mother with an unshakable resolve to provide her child with the best life possible. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself at the forefront of a movement that was more meaningful than she had ever envisioned. Guardian's heroic actions had sparked an outpouring of support for her rescue center, allowing her to expand her reach. But more than that, Sarah had witnessed a shift in how her community viewed stray animals. People who had once dismissed them as nuisances now saw them as sentient beings capable of extraordinary acts of love and loyalty. The rescue center became a hub of activity, a place where people from all walks of life came together to adopt animals, volunteer their time, or simply learn more about the importance of compassion. Sarah often marveled at how Guardian had not only saved a life but had also brought an entire community closer. It was as if his story had awakened something dormant in everyone, a shared sense of responsibility and kindness. Guardian, of course, was blissfully unaware of the magnitude of his actions. To him, life was now a series of sunny afternoons, playful romps in the yard, and endless affection from both Sarah and Emily's baby. But even in his innocence, Guardian exuded an aura of calm and wisdom, as if he knew that his presence alone brought comfort to those around him. His bond with Emily's baby grew stronger by the day, their friendship a heartwarming reminder of the purest forms of love. The media, too, continued to tell Guardian's story, but this time with a focus on its positive impact. News outlets highlighted Sarah's rescue center and Emily's inspiring comeback, encouraging viewers to support their local shelters and reach out to struggling single parents. Guardian's story resonated across social media, with countless people sharing their own experiences with animals who had changed their lives. Hashtags like #GuardianTheHero and #AdoptDon'tShop began trending, spreading awareness far and wide. But perhaps the most profound legacy of this journey was the way it touched the lives of strangers. Stories poured in from people who had been inspired to adopt stray animals, volunteer at shelters, or lend a helping hand to someone in need. Emily often received letters from single mothers who saw a part of themselves in her struggles and found hope in her story. Sarah, too, was overwhelmed by the messages of gratitude and encouragement that flooded her inbox. One particularly memorable letter came from a young boy who had been afraid of dogs his entire life. After hearing Guardian's story, he mustered the courage to visit Sarah's rescue center and adopt a small puppy. In his letter, he wrote, "Guardian taught me that dogs aren't scary, they're heroes. Now I want to be a hero for my puppy, too." As the months turned into years, the story of Guardian became a cherished memory, a tale that Sarah and Emily often recounted to anyone willing to listen. For Sarah, it was a reminder of why she had dedicated her life to rescuing animals. For Emily, it was a symbol of her own resilience and the strength she had found within herself. And for Guardian, it was simply a chapter in a life filled with love and adventure. The impact of their story extended beyond their small community. Animal welfare organizations across the country took note of the positive attention Guardian's story had generated. Campaigns were launched to promote the adoption of stray animals, and shelters reported an increase in adoptions. Guardian had become an unlikely ambassador for a cause that desperately needed a hero. In one final gesture of gratitude, Sarah and Emily organized a community event to celebrate Guardian's journey and the incredible connections he had fostered. Families, friends, and supporters gathered in a local park, where Guardian was honored with a special plaque commemorating his heroic actions. As Emily stood on the stage, holding her baby in one arm and Guardian's leash in the other, she fought back tears. "Guardian didn't just save my baby's life," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "He saved me. And in doing so, he reminded all of us what it means to care for one another, whether we have 2 legs or 4. The audience erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the park. Guardian, ever humble, wagged his tail and licked Emily's hand, seemingly oblivious to the attention he was receiving. As the event came to a close, Sarah and Emily stood side by side, watching Guardian play with the children in the park. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the scene. It was a picture-perfect moment, one that encapsulated the essence of their journey, a journey of hope, resilience, and love. And as the night fell, Emily turned to the crowd one last time. "If there's one thing you take away from this story, let it be this," she said. "Compassion has the power to change lives. It changed mine, and it can change yours too." With that, the event ended, but the message lingered in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by Guardian's story. Call to action: if you've been inspired by Guardian's journey, take a moment to consider how you can make a difference. Whether it's adopting a stray animal, volunteering at a local shelter, or simply offering kindness to someone in need, your actions have the power to create a ripple effect of compassion. Subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories like this, and don't forget to share this video with your friend and family. Together, we can continue spreading hope one story at a time.